Let's pop off right now. We got to get started.
We got to go.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's get the people in the chat. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I am your host, Greg Flamong, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uwayama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Tuesday, September 12th, and we have a mailbag show for everyone. It's Mailbag Tuesdays, as always. We've got a bunch of questions about the team, offense, defense, coaching, grades. Jamie's given everyone satisfactory so far. We're going to talk about that. And all the other questions from IrishSportsDaily.com subscribers. So thank you, everyone, for being here. If this is your first time catching the show, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell so you know that we're going live. If you prefer the audio form of this show, links to the podcast are in the description below. Jamie, Abe Froman is here.
The Sausage King of Chicago?
The Sausage King of Chicago is here. He is missing a work teleconference for this show. First of all, Abe, thank you for being here. We love it. We love to see you. We love to see you on the show. Look, if you're missing the work teleconference, as long as just make sure you're staying gainfully employed, Abe. That's what we're looking for. The Sausage King needs to get the sauces out to the people. And Abe, if you are on the work teleconference call, you know what you need? You need ESQ bamboo dress shirt from ESQclothing.com. ESQ has created the world's first bamboo dress shirt crafted from high-quality bamboo fabric. It's the softest and most comfortable shirt you'll ever put on. It's not only more sustainable than cotton, but also feels cooler, has stretch, is odor and wrinkle-resistant, and it's even machine washable. It pops on the teleconferences. It pops. Well, not teleconference, because that's on the phone, and no one sees you on that. But you know what? You want to feel good, Jamie. You want to feel good on the teleconference, and that's what ESQ will do. You've seen ESQ's one-piece collar bamboo dress shirt. It's the perfect shirt for today's business meeting. Business meeting, Jamie, or heading for a night out. Use ISD 15 and get 15% off all online items. You're on the Zoom calls. You don't want to wear pants. You don't want to wear dress pants. You want to wear, jogging shorts on the Zoom calls, but you need a nice quality shirt. And is my audio bad, Jamie?
You sound fine to me.
Okay. Tyler says he's had audio, so maybe it's just a Tyler thing. All right, everybody. Thank you for being here, Jamie. Before we get into the questions, I just wanted to kind of rehash. I've watched the game a couple of times now, and I couldn't be more impressed with the coaching job that Al Golden and Jared Parker did in this game. I think that is my biggest takeaway for me, is just the way that those guys had the team ready to go, made adjustments during the game. Al Golden didn't really have to make a ton of adjustments because I think the plan that they had was good, and they had those guys ready to go. So I was very impressed with that.
I'm completely with you. I think that, with Parker, it's so easy to look good as a play caller when everything's working.
Yeah.
When all your guys are winning up front, when you just have the better athletes, and it's just everything is clicking, like basically everything you called working. And that was a lot of the first couple games was that. So, it's one of those things that, he gets high marks for that, but everything looks good. And it's easy to call the next play when the last play is successful. Right. And he just did such a great job of being like, okay, this isn't working. What do we've got to do? And it was like obvious that was like a plan. Like they had that planned in with the stuff with the imbalance and the play action, the spider 2 wide banana and all that. But just that was so good. That was a fantastic job by him. And obviously, I don't even think the offense executed that great in this game, but they still managed to have all those big plays, and I think a lot of that has to do with him. And then with Golden, I just think the defense as a whole, you just see them playing faster, and everybody is just playing at such a higher level. And um, you have to play to your opponent and what you're going to do, like what your opponent's strengths and weaknesses are. And they absolutely exposed what NC State can and can't do, specifically Brandon Armstrong. Just like made him a pocket passer, and he was not good. He was not good as a pocket passer, and just everything they did kind of in behind. I think people should go to Greg's Twitter and check out some of his breakdowns of some of the stuff with the safeties were doing. Great stuff there, Greg, with the
Thank you.
with the stuff with the robber stuff that people should check out. It's a little bit too dense to kind of get into here, but people should definitely check that out. But when you kind of see that and you see what they're doing in terms of disguising stuff and switching things, and it's not overly complicated. Certainly not for someone who has played, right? It's not overly complicated, but it can look complicated to the offense, and that's the main thing, right? And then they go out and execute it. So just kudos to both those guys for doing a tremendous job in this game.
Yeah, the defensive plan was immaculate, and it was paid off by the players who executed that plan very, very well. And look at, I love it when the safeties are the stars, Jamie. I just get all excited, tears streaming down my face watching it. It was really good stuff. Stop asking for my name. Did I actually catch this live? You did. Congratulations. Thank you for being here. Love to have you. Love to have you in the show. Okay, Jamie, let's get in. Did this not click on? What's going on?
There we go.
There we go. It's not. Did I get it? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Iris1 says, not flying on an airplane this time. Iris1 on the last show was on an airplane catching us live. We've got some people just making sacrifices for the live show. You love to see that. What do you think about the rotation for the running backs and receivers? Should they stick with a similar group or a smaller group of each to allow them to get hot, or do you like what they're using everyone? What do you think there, James?
I mean, it's not a big group right now that they're really using, right? Like, yeah. I mean, if you look at it, like, they use 4. They probably shouldn't use 5. Like 4 is fine in the backfield and how they're used. Yeah, running back. Sorry. Like 4 is fine. And if you look how kind of Payne was used, he really only had a couple carries, and he was kind of brought in like as he's the passing game back, right? Like he's passing situations, like obvious passing situations, and that's because of pass rush stuff. But like the way they used Price and Love in this game was great. Like just adding them in, they were very additive to what they did. And obviously, Audric Estime is the guy who was the lead guy, and he got the snaps that produced that, but they never really had these drives where they were like running it down their throat. So it wasn't like, someone was going to get he wasn't going to get like 20 carries in this kind of game. This wasn't a 20 carry type of game. And they really didn't even run that many plays to begin with, really. But in receiver wise, like, I mean, it's a pretty small group that's playing, right? There's not that many guys that are playing. So I think it's been pretty good. Like, I don't know if you feel different about the receivers, Greg.
Well, they only rotate 6. So it's like the receivers and the backups. So it's like you want those guys to be free. You want fresh players. There's no reason not to. If you guys have if you have guys ready to go, who you feel confident that you put them in the game, you can run anything you want. And the fact that they are in that place with 2 freshmen is a very good thing. So I don't mind it, right? Like there are times when, like, and we're going to get to this question later, using speed on the field. I do think there are times when it's not that I don't think they're afraid to throw the ball with like Rico Flores in the game with like Jaden Greathouse, for example, or not Jaden Greathouse, but Jaden Thomas. I don't think they're afraid to throw the ball in that situation, but I do think I do have a concern about what they can run with those guys on the field because there's a speed element there. Like neither of those guys is a really like I'm going to stretch the field type. And so I'm a little bit concerned with that. But generally, I'm totally fine with their rotation there. You play 6. I mean, some teams play 9, so I think they're totally fine with that. Jason Smith's asking a question about how many plays a game is the offense averaging. I know in this one they had 61. I don't think they're over 65 for the year though. They didn't have that. They were under 60 against Navy. I don't remember specifically what it was.
The Navy game screws it all up, right? It's
yeah.
Like, that's why you can't really like, and then even with the Tennessee State game, right? It's like the averages are just different because of how you play those games and how, and even if you look at this game was like 3 and outs and explosive plays. Like it
they had 12 total possessions. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Was it 12? I thought it was more.
I think it was because they had 6 scoring or maybe it was 7. They had 7 scoring drives. So it had to have been because they had 6 3 and outs. So maybe it was
they
like
had 16 13, total 14. Drives. It was 16 total
16.
drives.
Okay, that's a ton then. That's a lot.
That's a lot of drives, right?
Yeah.
So but again, it's like it's because they weren't there's not like 10 play drives in there. So it's like they're not playing at a crazy tempo all the time too. So I mean, I've never been one of these guys like, who cares about the amount of plays? It's points. It's points. Points matter, right? And that's why like yards per play and that kind of like efficiency stats are more important than actual like number of plays, because total yards can be totally misleading. Someone runs 95 plays. It's like, they get 400 yards of offense. It's like, that's not really a good game.
Yeah. I mean, Notre Dame ran 61, NC State had 78, so that like 78 would be in the higher end of what you kind of expect.
Yeah.
I think upper 60s, lower 70s is usually, where you end up. So, but I think the question is more into the, like, do they need to have a heavy rotation if you're not running a ton of plays, which might be fair, but you do want guys who are involved in the game plan to get in the game. Right. You feel like they're ready to go. Iris Bronx says, with Notre Dame receivers struggling at times to gain separation, do you see Braylon James as a viable option toward the back half of the season? Think Tate, Fuller, and Lindsey in their first year. And then he has a follow-up right after. Speaking of Lindsey, how good would he look with Hartman at quarterback? The second part of that, I was actually thinking about yesterday. Like they need that element where it's like just over the top. Like he would be a very serious weapon for Notre Dame this year. I don't think he'd have a ton of touches, like basically everyone on the team. Like I don't think there's a ton of touches out there for any one particular player. And Lindsey's not a guy where it's like, oh yeah, like we're going to throw him 10 targets a game. Like I don't see him being like that, but they do need that element on the team. What do you think of them trying to activate Braylon James, Jamie?
I think it's good in theory, but I mean, it's like the same thing with Tobias Merriweather last year, right? Like it's really great in theory. But it's gotta get to a point, right, where that person is ready for it. Right. And, I mean, it's a good problem to have him possibly there. But it's just one of these things, like, where is he at, in terms of being able to play, and can they use him in a certain thing? Like that's a perfect example of a guy that you're like, I mean, I'm not thinking that the Tate, Fuller, and Lindsey in their first year. First of all, Lindsey, that was like second year for him, so it was
right. Lindsey did not, as a freshman, he did not get in.
So it was a little bit different, but I mean, I always just think of Chris Brown, where it was like, it was like, hey, we're playing Oklahoma this week. Chris Brown, get ready. We're throwing you a couple deep balls. Like, and one of those was huge in the game, right? So I think he could be that kind of thing, similar to Tobias last year, where he caught the slot fade for the touchdown against Stanford. And obviously, Tobias would have played more at the back half, so it would have probably looked a lot more like Fuller or something. And if he was healthy, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I think it would be great if it happened. But it's one of these things, like people just think like, yeah, you got to get this guy. And it's like, well, if he only can go out and just run go routes, it's like, then you have to use it at the right time. Because if you can't do all the other stuff, because look at how good like Jaden Greathouse, and people are like, wow, what, this guy's a freshman. And then you have the pick play, right, where he gets called on, and you're like, well, yeah, he still is a freshman. Like there's these things with it, that there's other pieces of it that go into playing wide receiver and knowing all this stuff too. And like checks, like they make a check and he doesn't know the right thing. Like all of these things go into it. So we don't really know where he's at, but talent wise, yeah, it would be awesome if they were able to get him in.
Yeah. Some context on Chris Brown. Obviously he caught the one against Oklahoma. They had him on those routes like very early in the season though. So like Michigan State, they missed him twice on a deep ball. The first play of the Michigan game, they sent him on a streak and Golson threw a pick throwing in his direction. So they tried to get him involved there. So he was always there. They finally hit the one against Oklahoma. I think there's two things to this for me. Marcus Freeman hasn't talked about him. Now he hasn't been asked about it, but like, I think that if he was close, he would talk about him being close, and he hasn't. If they were to send him, this would be a really good week for it, to show it to Ohio State. Like, we have this guy, and then you could put him in the game against Ohio State, and it's like, hey, they got this guy in the game, they're going to send him, and then they do something else with him. And it'd be easy to like, and now this is when people are always asking about wrinkles. Like, that's a wrinkle that you could throw in if you want. I don't have, like, I think with Tobias last year, and famously Jordan Johnson in 2020, everyone wanted him on the field. That was to solve a problem. I don't think Notre Dame has a problem with this the way that other people think, because if you look at their passing game, Sam Hartman's averaging 11.1 yards per attempt, which will not continue. If it did,
it's pretty good.
It would be elite. Yeah. Like, that would be very exciting. It will not continue. If he kept it like at like 9 for the year, that would be tremendous. Okay. 11.1, in my opinion, is not sustainable. But the point is that thus far, Notre Dame has gotten explosives out of the passing game. But they haven't in the way that I think, is traditionally thought of. It's like going over the top with a post, like something like that. They haven't hit that one, but they've hit other ones. Obviously, they had Tobias on the long catch and run. They had Tyree on a long catch and one. They got Holden Stays up the seam. They had Mitchell Evans up the seam. And I think that when people talk about the receivers, having trouble, like separating, like this was a game where Jared Parker and Notre Dame saw a weakness with the switch routes that happened to be that the tight ends were the ones who were going to benefit from those routes. And you have receivers, you have the slot with Tyree on one and Tobias Merriweather on another. They run the switch and they take the safety, the middle safety, off on a post, and they clear that out, and it clears the way for the tight end to hit up the seam. Like, in another game, they could scheme a wide receiver for an explosive like that. And then no one has these questions, So, like, I think the way that we're thinking about the wide receivers, like I hear people saying like Jaden Thomas didn't step up or had a bad game. Why did he have a bad game? Why? I don't see that he had a bad game. He had the one play on the sideline where he could have made the catch. True fact. But like, it's a tough play to make. He didn't make it, but like, they didn't throw him the ball after that. I don't think he had a bad game at all. He didn't have the opportunities that other players had. Same way with Tobias. Same way with Deion Colsey. Some games it's going to be a Holden Stays game, and so you want more from him, but I don't think he had a bad game per se. I just think he didn't have those chances.
I think the way to look at it is that it's not being like, man, this guy sucked or whatever in the game.
Yeah.
I think you can look at it like he got 4 targets like early in the game and didn't get targeted again. If he was really like wide receiver 1, they're finding ways to get him
For
the
sure.
ball, right? So I think that's the way to look at it is like, he comes out of camp, he's wide receiver 1. It's like, well, he's maybe Notre Dame's wide receiver 1, but he's not a true wide receiver. It's not like he's Michael Floyd. And that's the way to kind of look at it, right? Like,
yeah.
It doesn't mean that he might not have other days, or these other guys might like have other days, but that's kind of how the offense is built right now. And by the way, I wanted to bring up too that, USC 18 explosive passing plays, 20 plus or more yards right now. Notre Dame 17. So pretty good, I would say, right now, obviously both have played 3 games. So that's why it's relevant too, but it's also insane. Mississippi 21 in 2 games, which, yeah. Okay. Like lane gonna lane, man. But yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. CFB Hertz asked about Tyree being able to take the top off. Theoretically, they haven't really put him in that position yet. So I guess that remains to be seen. I can't say that he can't do it because he hasn't tried it. They haven't tried and failed, but we haven't seen it yet.
It's a lot of this stuff is matchup related too, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Are you going to play a team that like mans up a safety on Tyree? And that's something that they're going to do a lot. Because if that's what you're going to do, then yeah, that's where you're like, okay, we got like a guy, a safety who runs like a 4.6. This guy's got to cover Tyree. Like, yeah, that's when you take your shot. It's like so much of it is like matchup related to what you do. It's why people too were getting, oh man, the tight ends. And it's like, well, now Holden stays, whatever. Stays might catch 1 ball next, like that's just how it might be, right? Like, so much of it is matchup related.
Yeah. So let's I'm not as fretting about the whiteout system. Other people, not that Irish Bronx was there, but some other people kind of do that. Silverback says, barring injury, I think it's likely Rudolph sticks with Coogan, Corral, and Rocco as the starting interior O-line. What type of strategies can or are commonly implemented to add support if they struggle in pass protection?
Well, I mean, some of that is what they're doing with it's what you're doing in the passing game, right? Like if you are like going to do like more quick game stuff, and some of it is just not like that you are going to just, we're just going to do a ton of quick game, but you mix it in more because then these guys can I'm trying to kind of explain it that people get. So like if it's like a quick pass, a guard can hard set, which means like they are like they're not dropping like deep
Right.
in their pass set, right? So they're playing that like fast and physical and like hard there to play it because the ball's going to get out quick, right? And that's different. That's a lot easier for a guard than being like, okay, we got a 7-step drop or whatever, right? Like, so some of it is like mixing it up to kind of protect those guys and stuff too. That's part of it. Some of it is like play action and RPO stuff, right? To do that too. It's like, well, these guys don't have to worry about pass blocking because they're run blocking all the time. And these guys are always worried about run. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff. I mean, some of it is you can help somewhat in terms of like getting like the tackles can help a bit, like, but you don't want those guys to have to help them because then that could leave you exposed where all of a sudden you got a pass rusher against a back or a tight end, right? So you don't want to be in that kind of situation. So I think it's more like call related that you would kind of help them through that.
Yeah. Another thing they could do is play better. That's also on the table because like some of this stuff is like you said, some of it's games, but like there was a play in the first, I don't know if it was the first quarter. It's hard for me to like think back because of the delay Is it like early in the game after the delay or early in the game in the game? But they sent us this. They sent a safety, I think it was, on a pressure, and he comes and he crosses the face of Carell, and Carell just kind of whiffs on him.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey man, like you're a senior. Like you can't miss that. Like that's not, you shouldn't be missing that. The play where Hartman gets strip sack on when it's 24-17 the third quarter, like that's a 3-man rush there, and 3 players lose the player who ultimately it's the 2 guards in Carell. They just lose the one tech inside, and then Hartman probably thinks I have time to get out of here because it's a 3-man rush. I don't need to worry about someone coming in behind, and he splits the 3 defenders. Like that should not happen, right? Like you can't help your guards any more than it's like there's 3 of you to one guy. You can't help them any more than that, right? So like stuff like that, like that's just like, hey, play better, you know? Like let's do a better job.
I mean,
here.
I will say though, this is the problem with, if you look at the game though, because you're like, man, they gave up 4 sacks, and you're like, man, that's bad. But it's like I mentioned it on Power, the misses were loud, so those looked worse. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's like you can get beat and you can lose on a rep. Like that happens. Like no one is 100% ever, right? Like no one is 100% in their assignments in pass pro. Like it just never happens. You know, because the other guys, especially when you're playing like a good defensive line, right? But if you lose, you got to be able to like recover a bit and like make up for it and give the other guys a shot. And the problem is like, you know, you saw with like Rocco early in the game, like he was losing loud, and that blows up the play completely, right? So you know, that's the thing too with, as Jason Smith mentioned, Blake Fisher. Blake is good most of the time, but when he loses loud. And that's just, you just can't do that. Like you have to be able to be better. It's like, okay, you get beat around that. You have to like get enough of a piece to allow Hartman to step up. And then on that same play, Rocco can't get like driven on this. There's all these other pieces that go along with it. So I don't think the protection, I mean, the protection in this game wasn't bad at all, but it's just like the misses were loud, and you can't have that.
Yeah, so like sometimes you have a missed protection. I mean, a perfect example is against Navy, right? Where Audric blows a protection and Sam sidesteps him and he throws a touchdown to Jaden Greathouse. Or Jeremiah Love blows a protection and Sam gets the ball out to Deion Colsey, you know? And it's like, those could be fumbles in other situations. And it's like, oh, you know, Audric, you can't do that, right? But for these guys, it's like, is this like a real problem? So it's not always that when you lose bad, it ends up in a fumble and it costs the team. But sometimes it does, right? But it has to be fixed all the same. So look, and this is a good point from the Sausage King, Ig Froman. Great thing about the line making mistakes and taking time to gel is the schedule. Didn't open with Ohio State or FSU. You know, true fact, right? Like they did have time, and you want to see it against a team like NC State, right? Like you see it first. Marcus Freeman talked about like they weren't ready for the intensity of what NC State brings, you know?
Yeah, it's a huge step up.
And so, you know, lesson learned, and you move on.
Yeah. So I think, sorry to interrupt, but just,
no, you're good.
If it's like one of these things too, that I don't think that people take into account is that like, that is basically like the first game for the offensive line in a real way. We're like, okay, you're playing real guys now. You're also playing on the road for the first time in a hostile environment. There's like all these other factors that go into it, you know, with the weather and all that kind of stuff too. But if that game is at home, it's an easier game for an offensive lineman, right? You're doing a silent count. There's these other factors in it. And then you hope that's the hope, is that like, well, that gets better, you know, like when next time, obviously when you play Ohio State at home, but also when you're playing Duke on the road, because that's probably going to be like, that crowd's probably going to be pretty lit, for at least by Duke standards.
Right. That's a point that Michael Hoffman's brought up. He's just, we play a faster, more talented defense. I think that's Ohio State specifically. I think Duke will be similar to NC State defensively. And the thing about Ohio State and probably even Duke is you can't count on those teams just not covering the tight end out of the backfield. It like that's so bad from Ohio NC State. Like you got shredded by the tight end leaking, essentially from a fullback position. It's really bad. Okay, so that's not good. And you can't count on that from them, right? And so that's where it's like Notre Dame found a way to win in this game, and they found a way to be explosive on offense in this game against that team, given the problems that they had up front. And so, you need to they need to get better, right? Just this experience and move on. So Duke Stadium is like 50K. Let me tell you something, Troy. 50,000 people is a ton of people. That is a lot of people.
Especially if Duke is good. If Duke continues to be good, that's gonna be loud. It's gonna be
like people. I remember during COVID when it was like, oh, there's only going to be like 30,000 people in the stands for Notre Dame. It's like I understand that that's like it holds 80, so I get it. But like, have you ever been to like a big high school like playoff game? That's only like 10, 12,000 people, and it can rock. So 50K is a lot, especially if they're fired up. Oh, Brian's here. Thanks for being back, Brian. Brian Chesenak. Thank you for the super chat. All my state friends were like, it was self-inflicting wounds. I was like, here's a self-inflicting wound, not recruiting someone to cover Big 13. You gotta, it's a bad job by the staff. You gotta be ready for the tight ends when you play Notre Dame. That's how I feel about it. All right. Next question. CFB Hurts. We got great pressure on Armstrong blitzing 5+. I don't know that Notre Dame brought 5+ too many times, by the way. But when we rushed just three or four guys, it seemed like we were focusing more on keeping him in the pocket rather than trying to shed blockers to get to Armstrong. Would you agree? And if so, would you expect that to change against a less mobile quarterback? Cough, Kyle McCord, cough.
First of all, Kyle McCord's not a bad athlete. Just in case people are wondering, like he can run a little bit. Like he's not going to like look to run as much as Armstrong would, but he's a pretty decent athlete. So don't be surprised if he runs a little bit, and he can do some damage with his legs. He's a good athlete. I think they definitely were strategic about how they rushed in this game. You could see it, right? Like you just had guys who just weren't even like specifically trying to work a move. Like they were definitely like squeezing the pocket. And that was fairly obvious on a lot of plays. Right. So, and that is purposeful because they knew that's how Brandon Armstrong could win the game. Right. Like that's how they have their best chance. And it's funny because, Brian mentioned the NC State fans who are like self-inflicting wounds. It's like, nah, man, that's your personnel. That's what they got, right? Like Brandon Armstrong, that's who he is, right? He's not a pocket passer. Definitely not with these receivers, right? Definitely not with these receivers. And so they just had to make him a pocket passer, and then he ended up being that guy. He's not accurate, consistently accurate. He's not a great decision maker. If he feels any kind of heat, that's why anytime there was a blitz, he's just like, boom, get the ball up. He's not even thinking. That's why there were so many chances to pick off balls, and they made so many plays there. He's just like, I got to get this ball up. He wasn't even thinking, right? And when he knows that running is not an option, that's what happens, right? So it was a really good strategy. It was very smart that they did it that way.
Yeah. I mean, look, that's what you want from Al Golden, right? Maybe not the greatest recruiter ever, doesn't like it, knows how to scheme defense. And so look, you got to take it. You got to take it, right? So that's important to note. All right, CFB Hurts with another question. The first two games of the season, We had a lot of long drives, but fans were complaining about the lack of big explosive plays. Then on Saturday, we had trouble maintaining long drives, but dropped explosive plays left and right. Was that due to NC State's aggressive defense selling out to stop short medium stuff and leaving them vulnerable to big plays, or would you attribute it to something else?
Yeah, I mean, they were selling out to stop the run.
Yeah.
They were definitely selling out to stop the run, which is why those plays work, right? Like the leak out to Stays and the one to Sherwood, and then the other one to State, like they work because they're like so geeked up. And like the one play where okay, so prior to the Sherwood touchdown, right? There was a 3rd and short, and I mentioned it in the rewatch notes on ISD, but like it really wasn't that short. It was like 3rd and 2.5, and I was like, I looked at it and I was like, why are they bringing 4 tight ends for this? Because it wasn't like you got to get a quick like hit or convert. Like it was like, this is going to be hard. Like it's not a thing. And then obviously you're pulling everybody up. Like they were running it like it was like at the 1 yard line, and that wasn't. I think that's when I bet Parker probably, if he looked at that again, probably would have changed, the way that looked. But specifically on that play, they were trying to run a power, and Spindler was pulling, and he got like stuck back because Evans got blown off the ball.
You're talking about the 3rd and 2 play, like the 3rd and 2.5. Yeah.
The 3rd and 2.5. That was like, they got a stuff on it. NC State got a stuff on it. And what happened was the backer absolutely just screamed in on like full speed run at the snap on the blitz, timed it up, and just blew up Evans. Evans had no chance. It wasn't like even like a terrible job by Evans. It was just like, this is what the play was. But and that was a great play on that situation. But that's also guessing that they were going to do that. And if you play that way on with the other short yard stuff, which they did, that's how you get burned like that, right? Because if everybody's selling out. And so that's just one of those things where it's like, it wasn't the greatest call there, but the counter to it was amazing because he knew that that's what they were going to do. So even in the very first play of the game, yes, the line didn't do a good job, whatever, but it was 11 personnel and they had 7 to 6 in the box. It was like, and Notre Dame's not running a zone read, so it's not like they have the extra number with the quarterback adding in. So it wasn't a good situation for Notre Dame to run the ball there. And even though they lost, but it was like part of the reason they lost is because of the extra guy, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be able to kind of take advantage of that when teams do that. So, and they did. So that was a huge part of it.
Yeah. And I think that it might be a situation where Parker needs to understand the way that a defense is playing you. Because, Jason Smith says Jared Parker set them up. I think what is more likely is he learned and he said, you know what? I'm not, because it's 3rd and 2. Like you want to pick up the first down. You're not using that play call to set up something else. Like you want to get the first down in that position. Notre Dame hadn't really been moving the ball at that point. The thing is like, if you look at how the play is supposed to work, if they block it right, like Estime might score, but it's just NC State had been so aggressive in those situations. You're not pulling Stays because he's in a fullback position, but you're bringing him around, right? And then you're pulling Spindler. Like there's so much moving parts there on a play when like NC State wants to just hit you in the face.
Yeah.
And so, Evans gets blown up. And so then Stays has no one to block and Spindler has no one to block. And you end up with 3 players sitting in the hole unblocked because there's no one there. But then, like you said, like, okay, learned his lesson, use their aggression and set it up. So that's and look,
I'm not a big pull people at the goal line guy.
Or
I
in
just,
short yardage, yeah.
yeah.
Because like you said, any player that's being aggressive, like they'll just blow up the play before the puller can get there. But we talked about last week about the importance of being a physical team and running the ball when it clues in the safeties and the corners, even if they're not like main run support, they're still always thinking about it. And that's where it shows up on all the tight end league stuff, where someone is responsible for him out of the backfield, but they're all looking in the backfield. They're all looking in the run, right? And they just let him go. It happened multiple times. The touchdown to Sherwood, Evans is running by himself as well. If Hartman had 2 balls, he can throw 2 touchdowns. They're not covering anyone on these plays, and that's why you do that, because it's like, and that's why you play that way, because it opens things up for other people, and that's how you get explosives out of a fullback leak, So that's good job by the staff. Good scheme. Sloth says, apparently Estime and the coaching staff, except Freeman, used hot dogs to fuel up for the impressive post-lightning delay performance. Did you two have a go-to pregame meal or halftime snack to fuel up for a game?
I like pregame meal. Like, first of all, I mean, I'm old. We used to eat like pasta before games. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, it was not. We weren't doing it right.
We would have
We
like
weren't doing it
pizza
right.
before the game.
Yeah,
Like
we weren't
it's
doing
like
it right.
3 hours before the game. It's like, have
Yeah.
pizza.
I mean, I will say when I played in college, we had our pregame meal was like soup and sandwich, pretty much.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it was. It's like, that was like wherever, like whether it was like a home game or staying at a hotel, that's what it was. I mean, during the halftime stuff, like, I mean, the like power bars and stuff like that, like that kind of
Bananas.
thing,
Bananas are
all that kind
very
of stuff.
popular. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I've never had a weather delay game for like one time I had, like, I mean, when I was really, really young, I had a hockey tournament where it was like we played a game, and then I was like, well, guess what? The championship game's in an hour. So it's like, well, stay in the dressing room. We're bringing in pizza. Like they had that. That's like the closest I've ever come to having to eat in between a thing. But that's, yeah, I've never had to experience it.
Yeah, I've never had a delay like that either. I was I always ate a big breakfast because I was the type of person that as it got closer to the game, like, I don't want to eat. It's hard for me to eat. It's hard for me to, because I'm just so, I don't want to say nervous. Before a football game, I think people need to like realize how physical of a sport it is, and your body is preparing for the physicality of it. You are going to beat up your body for 2.5 hours, right? So there's a nerves aspect to that where it's like, this is going to be a physical struggle. Halftime, I would try to eat something, because by that point it's like the nerves are gone and I haven't really eaten, so I need to refuel that way. So that's what it was. I wasn't like a big pregame meal guy, but like pizza and pasta was like so popular at the time.
Yeah, it was pretty
which sounds terrible to me as a 42-year-old.
Yeah, it's not
when
good,
you're 16, 17, 18, it's like, yeah, I'll eat anything. I don't care. That's a fun question though. Irish One asks, we are a quarter of the way through the season. What do you think of each position group? How would you grade the coaching for each? We had talked about this beforehand. It's hard to give grades because like you said, we've really just had like a 1-game season so far. Let me ask you this though. Is there any coach, and I want to focus on the coaching staffs. Is there any coach where you say like, that guy is really doing a good job? Because I haven't answered. Is there anyone that you're thinking about?
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, there's probably more than one guy. I mean, I would say if I had to only pick one, I'd probably say Chris O'Leary and the safeties. But I mean, you could say you could pick the corners. You could pick Jared Parker. You could pick out. I mean, it's pretty. I don't really. I mean, that's why I said, like, when you asked me this last night and told me about this, I was like,
Yeah.
all B's. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
or you could say all A's or A minuses. Like, everybody's done good. They're 3-0. Like, like, you could nitpick certain things to make it go down either way, but it's like, well, I I don't know. Like, if you're gonna say, like, oh well, Al Washington, because they hadn't get enough sacks. It's like, well, part of the reason why they didn't get sacks is because of this or whatever, right? And like, also, like, do you also count that Howard Cross is balling out or whatever, or that
Yeah.
Riley Mills probably? I was saying to Matt that I thought this was Riley Mills' best game that he's ever played for Notre Dame. Like, that was
Yeah.
his best all around. Like, he had more impactful game when he played Virginia in 2021, pass rushing, but as just full all around run pass, this was his best game. And I think somebody mentioned in the comments that some NC State person said that too, and I think that's correct. He played really, really well. So it's tough. I mean, I guess I would go with O'Leary. I don't know, who would you go with, Greg?
Yeah. CFB Hertz in the chat has mentioned Dylan McCullough. I think having all of those guys ready to play and play at a high level, very impressive. I think you got to be impressed by that. I think Chancey Stuckey having Greathouse and Flores ready to go is impressive.
Really young receiver group.
Yeah, really young receivers like Tobias. Remember, like, he didn't play a ton last year. So I think that's important to mention. Mickens, Christian Gray looks really good. I think he's someone you should mention. I think Jaden Mickey has looked a lot better. Cam Hart, I mean, he should get credit for Cam Hart and Ben Morrison as well. I mean, he's coached them. So credit to him there. But if I had to pick someone, I'm with you. I think it's Chris O'Leary. Absolutely. I don't know who is coaching Thomas Harper.
I think he's kind of like, it's kind of mixed.
Is it both of them?
I think it's both, right?
Okay.
But I think he works with both. But Harper, what a game.
He's a huge addition to Notre Dame. I mean, just enormous. I mean, he's going to have a tough, like, look, people are going, I have a prediction that people are going to freak out about him. Shared custody. CFB Hurt says that's good. People are going to freak out about him against USC. I think he's got a really tough matchup because what they do with their slots is just tough for anybody.
Also, a reminder why Tariq Bracy missing that game was just
a big deal.
Huge.
Yeah. I mean, Tariq Bracy and Cam Hart, you don't want that. But Chris O'Leary, when have we ever seen 3 safeties in a football game for Notre Dame playing like that? They all make a huge play at some point. Ramon Henderson's making diving interceptions. I'm so impressed with them. The way that they are just passing off responsibilities, this is the way they play their defense. There are so many opportunities for busts or for them to be Gilman, Elliott, Hamilton, CFB Hurts. That's right. The 2019 safeties. There are so many opportunities for miscommunication and busts in the secondary. The way that they are communicating to not just each other, but then the defense at large. You know, they are switching who the robber is and who has deep middle with motion, communicating that correctly, then playing the defense the way that it's supposed to be played. Like they are really in check. They are really on point, making plays. It's just Xavier Watts, not the play. Someone mentioned it in the chat, not playing through the receiver on that play, jumping out of the way and still getting the pass broken up. Like there are so many little things that they're doing that are right. Who would have, was safety not just one of the biggest question marks on this team? And so for the way that they played against NC State, just a huge performance. They were so important to the game plan, and they really came through for Al Golden and Chris O'Leary. So I would say of everyone, it's him. I think he's done the best job. And so look, the safeties, man, it's I love to see that. Original Bubs asks, Does this offense feel like the 2012 defense? Interesting. High-profile media star that won't be a first-round pick, but maybe Heisman finalist, strength at all levels, couple studs on the line, but just no real weakness. I think if there's a difference, it's that we'd have a young talent on the roster more than we did back then, though maybe you compare Love and Price to Kavari Russell.
I think this is like one of these fun things that only a Notre Dame fan would do and have fun with it. But no, I don't really see it. I think like it's a fun kind of thing to talk about, but I never even thought of it once. You brought it up and I was like, and then I was like, no, because like, it's not the same. Like, obviously too, like Teo, it's nice to say like, oh, it wasn't going to be a first round pick, but it's like, I mean, Teo was like the most dominant player in college, like the defensive player in college football that year. And
yeah,
they also had like, I guess you could say that Joe Alt is Stephon Tuitt. I mean, you could do these kind of things, but it's like, nah, not really. I don't really see it, but it's fun. It's fun.
It's hard to compare an offense to a defense.
Yeah.
Like they're just different. Like there's no, like, who is the Zeke Mata, who's the Bennett Jackson? Like, it's hard to make those comparisons. The only thing that I think could kind of have traction is like what if like there's like, and look, if they end up undefeated, that would be awesome. But what if there's like this scandal where like Sam Hartman's rib, like it's not really his rib,
He never got his rib removed.
He never got his
rib removed.
Like, it's totally,
it was a fake rib. It was he got that rib at an auction or something.
Like they lied to him or something.
Thought it was his real, or they gave him a fake rib. He did get his rib removed, but it was that rib that that his mom made into a necklace is like, not actually.
Deadspin is gonna break the story. It's like a cat's rib or something. It's not really his rib. It would just be so it's so bad. Rob Wozniak says McCord is named the starter from now until the end of the season.
I mean, he was the starter. Like,
he was the
Brown
starter.
Barely played. Brown barely played.
Netflix docuseries, The Rib. You hate this. Oh, we're broken. All right, XRND 1994. Do you want to see Notre Dame do more unbalanced lines? How about more two backs with Price and Love?
Not more unbalanced lines. I think to continue to use it, but not like do it all the time. Like it's like the point of doing it in that situation is like they never saw it. Yeah. So then you do it, and then it's like, well, they got to adjust to it. They obviously didn't adjust to it right away. And then you counter from their adjustments to it, right? So that's why it worked. But if you start doing it and that's kind of how you're using it, and then it becomes like too many teams to become ready for it, So it's like you got to be kind of smart about how you do it. If you keep building off of that, then I think cool. That would be great to see. Two backs with Price and Love, like. I mean, they did it once, and it was specifically like they were trying to hit something big out of it. And it was because they were like trying to get a look, and they ran Love in motion, and they were hoping that it was going to be man and the back would run with him. And then they were just going to counter back, and that was going to be a huge hole, and Price was going to run for 60 or whatever. It wasn't man. And it's going to be end up like a 5-yard gain or whatever. But like, if that wasn't, then that would have like opened things up and whatever. But I do like that two back look, like what they did with 21 last year. Mm-hmm. And those are the guys that I think would be the best in it, because you can pass out of it. Or that's another thing too, where if we're talking about Tyree, like that is the perfect example of just like when he should go into the backfield and be in that part of it, and you don't even really have to hand him the ball at any time. Maybe you can give him one or something like that, but like that's kind of what you do with it. So I'm definitely would like to see them do more of that, but not like again, it's the same kind of thing. You don't want to do it too much because you want to like have it for when, have that wrinkle for when you need it.
Yeah. And I think what we'll probably see is something for each team that Notre Dame plays. I mean, not Central Michigan, but like they'll have something for Ohio State where it's like specific to the way Ohio State plays defense. Like they'll have something ready to go there, or USC, or whoever, right? Like that is the thing that can that can put you over top in a game, right? Like 80-yard touchdown that Audrey Custom had. Oh, interesting. Jacob Paulus is talking about Joe Alt, tackle eligible, tight end from high school. Could be, Jamie. Lewistown Lady Panther basketball. I was looking for a big year from Colsey. So far, it's mostly crickets. Are the other guys just better, or is it if Casey hasn't been open?
The other guys are better. I think
the other guys are better, but there's also like what kind of big year were you expecting, I guess? Because that might be like, I think if he ends up
reset with the expectations, yes.
Yeah, like if he ends up with like 20-something catches, he has a touchdown already. If he ends up with like 20-something catches for, I don't know, ends up with 3 or 4 touchdowns, like I think that would be fine, right? He doesn't start and he backs up the best player on the best wide receiver on the team.
Also, like I think that you can the reason too why Thomas is, because you could do more stuff with Thomas, like in the run game and stuff, and in the slot, like where Colsey's a little bit more limited. So that's part of it too. Like, so even that's why with Tobias too, right? Like Tobias, you can do all these different things with, especially because he can be involved in the run game too, right? So I would say that Colsey, to have the kind of the same kind of year that he had last year, is probably fair expectations. And if more opportunities come up, maybe that he can have a bigger year than that. But I just, as of right now, he's clearly behind those other guys.
Yeah, and I the way that, and it just popped in my mind right now, like I could see him having like a Corey Robinson type career, where it's like, wasn't like ever a go-to guy, like maybe you thought as a freshman, but like 2 touchdowns against Florida State in 2014. He had a big game against Syracuse there, but it's like never did big numbers, but like he had moments. And I think that can be Deion Colsey. I think that can be what it is. And I think that's fine, right? I don't think there's any kind of problem with that.
Yeah, he'll help the team.
Yeah. Funk Beavis says, who scares you more, Zachariah Branch or Marvin Harrison Jr.? That's a good question.
I mean, it's a tie. I mean, I think that's the thing, right? Is that, Harrison, I guess, because he's going to play more, Branch is every time he's on the field, it's a problem, but it's kind of like playing Reggie Bush when he's, a junior compared to playing Reggie Bush when he was a freshman, that's the way. So yeah, it's Harrison. But I mean, Branch, because the return game and all that kind of stuff too, right? But they're those guys are really good. They're really good players, right? Like, and that's the thing so far, right? Is on defense, Notre Dame hasn't had to play a guy that it's like, okay, this guy is like a game wrecker. Yeah. Like, yeah, okay, they have to game plan for Brennan Armstrong in a certain way, but it's like, okay, well, you're playing USC, and it's like you have to do all these things to make sure you're doing to stop Caleb Williams, but he's got all these weapons around him, and that's why it's so tough. And it's the same thing with Marvin Harrison Jr. It's not like you can go and say like, well, we're going to double him the whole game. Mm-hmm. And because if you do, you leave chances, then all of a sudden you can't like if you single Emeka Egbuka the whole game, it's probably not going to go well, right? Like it's just you have to do different things, and it's like that's where Al Golden defense that's where they really earn their money, right? You got to be able to do it, and Marty Biaggi too. Like they have to be really smart, because even some of these ones, it's like great that McPherson averaged 50 yards a punt. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like he can't get like that against USC. Like there has to be a plan. And with Schrader too, the plan has to be at the end zone every time. Like that's what you got to do.
Yeah. You want to have a plan, whether you're, the Notre Dame defensive coordinator or the Notre Dame special teams coach, or if you're starting a business, Jamie, you got to have a plan. And part of that plan is using social media and branding to diversify your business. And if you want to do that, then you're going to want to contact VSR Media, founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh. VSR Media provides a professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are just aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior, and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily and receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. You want to get recruited, Jamie? You got to have a plan. You got to have a plan. Call VSR Media Company. And they'll hook you up. Mention Irish Sports Daily, 20% off. All right. Next question here. Drew Brennan, 77, asks, here we go. Going to imagine this weekend is not one we'll see Notre Dame continue to reveal wrinkles from an offensive perspective. Imagine they will be saving that till OSU in 2 weeks. With that being the case, what would be some wrinkles that you would like to see from the offense to keep other defenses guessing? 2 back sets, 5 wide. Their depth and personnel, could we possibly see what could we possibly see from Coach Parker? Into this a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's just one of these things too, right? Where this is the kind of game you show anything, you're showing it specifically for Ohio State. It's like better prepare for this.
Yeah,
you better be spending time on this. Like that's just everything. It's like how the old Lou Holtz. It's like we're running a fake punt here, not because we want to convert this fake punt, but because we want the next.
We want them to practice it.
We want to practice it, right? So that's definitely a thing. So I think we kind of got into I think more 21 stuff I think is great. I really liked what they did in the first game with everything they did with 12 personnel in terms of spreading them out when they did it. Right. Yeah. So I'd love to see more of that. I just don't think Notre Dame is you can go is kind of built. You can do a little bit of 10, right? Where you get the 4 wide kind of thing, right? But I just don't really think that's a good, that doesn't suit Notre Dame. You know what I mean? That means you're taking off players that are probably better off the field. And I just don't think that. So you can do a little bit of that. I think it's good to kind of have that in your bag, just kind of it's good to have 21 personnel in your bag. But I don't know. I don't really know if there's anything specifically, that I can think of that, really stands out that I would want them to show. I don't know.
So I think there's the offshoots of what they've already run, right? So you're leaking stays into the flat there. Instead of sending them to the flat, send them down the sideline, right? Because they're going to practice. What are they going to practice against? They're going to practice running into the flat. And when you run to the flat, what do you want to do? You don't try to get to the upfield shoulder. You want to get to the downfield shoulder because you want to jump in front and pick off the pass, right? So send them down the sideline. You're going to out leverage the DB there. When you roll right and you throw to the tight end, Look for them to leak a tight end the other way, right? Like the throwback to the tight end, which is always open. Like look for that, right? Because you show them something on film, they prepare for that thing, and then you run the natural progression off of that they're not ready for. Like that's the kind of thing that I think we would see. Not on offense, Jamie, but I was really thinking about the I need to find it on Twitter because it's a good illustration of what I'm talking about, because describing it here it might be a little bit confusing. But the robber switch defense, I wonder if Al Golden will implement that for something like USC, because what Notre Dame did in this game is you have one of the safeties sitting in the middle of the field, everyone else is playing man, and what'll happen is you'll get basically double crossers. And now that you've shown it on film, what they'll do is they'll just instruct the quarterback to like, hey, we're going to send one crosser. The robber will jump that. You throw it to the crosser behind, who will be open because there's no robber in the middle of the field anymore. Well, what you can do is when the robber jumps the original crosser, the man covering that crosser then breaks off and switches. They basically pass them off, and then that player becomes the robber. We saw this with Cincinnati. And I've showed this to you, and I was actually looking for it yesterday and I couldn't find it, but I showed this to you. I was like, man, that is a killer defense. Like that is because the quarterback thinks, oh, he's going to come free, and you switch robber and he'll throw it right to the guy. Like stuff like that is where it's like, we showed it to Brennan Armstrong. We're going to show the next offshoot of that to Caleb Williams. Try to get him to throw you the ball there. So it's things like that where it's like that could come up. But we'll see if Notre Dame has that in their bag, right? It's a pretty sophisticated defense to run. But look, you got to do stuff like that against the really good teams. Coley 1, 2, 3. Put you on the spot. Final ranking over under 7.5. What do you think, Jamie?
I mean, I think that no one should care about the rankings at all.
Well,
like it's,
you picked 11-1, right?
Yeah. So
if they
under,
they will be in the top 7.
Yeah, under would be my pick, but I'm just saying, like, I look at every time, oh, the AP's out, Notre Dame Notre Dame dropped to 11, but what they won against it? Who cares? Because none of it matters, because all of it is just like I just see like Kirk Herbstreit releases his top 5 or his top 4, and then his others just missing out, right? Like ESPN probably, they do a graphic with it, right? It's like he does it every week, right? He's got to do it. And I'm sure there's like Notre Dame fans who are like screw you, Kirby's like Herbie's like doesn't put Notre Dame here. Like there's all that kind of stuff, right? And just like and like I saw, and I was just interested because he put the top coaches of the week, right? And I'm always wondering, because I'm like, this guy's working this game. He's not actually watching most of these games, right? So he's just like actually just kind of like seeing what happened, right? Like he's seen the highlights for the most part. I'm not saying the guy isn't grinding tape during the week or whatever.
I don't think he is grinding tape.
I don't think he is, because he's also doing the Thursday night NFL. So yeah, he's not. Exactly. But he's not. But anyways, like, he's putting out the week. So I'm like, people take it too personally when they see it. But I just wanted to see, and because he just put it out tweet, and I'm like, I want to see what the comments are, because I want to see like if like. And first comment is some Notre Dame fan, like, with all due respect, Marcus Freeman should have been number 2 on this. Like, I was just like, okay, like I just, and maybe you make that argument for it, but it's like, it's just one of these things. It's like impossible to argue, just like the rankings, right? Like someone asked for power hour. It's like, who's your top 5 in the country right now? I'm like, it's week 2, man. Like, like Texas beat Alabama. Texas is number 1. Like pretty much, because nobody else has played anybody of that caliber yet, right? So it's like you can't really say. I can say that here's the thing, if Notre Dame ends up going undefeated from Ohio State past USC and they're undefeated there, no one will have beat Ohio State and USC on the thing. They should 100% be number 1. I don't care what anybody else has done. that they should be number one. But in the end, it won't even matter if they end up like laying an egg later on, right? It's just like I just never get caught up in the rankings anymore, because with the playoff, especially when it's going to be 12 team, it's like someone could be ranked like 11th for like a good portion of the year. It doesn't matter until the very end, really.
Yeah. Like, how do you evaluate a team like Michigan right now?
Impossible.
You can't. They haven't played anybody. Their coach is not even there, you know. They're doing salutes, but whatever. I don't know how.
I know, yeah.
I don't know how you. I don't know how you evaluate that. Jacob Paulus said 32 personnel, full house, T formation. If there was ever a team, this is the team for that.
I know, yeah.
I could totally see Estime middle, Payne right, or Jeremiah Love right if you want to do that, and then Jodarian Price. Like, I could see all those guys. They could all run for power. I think that would be totally fine. I would love to see that. In fact, if they do see that, like, people will run out of the stands. Like, old men will run out of the stands and like jump on the field and like hug Marcus Freeman, and they'll like sing songs to Jared Parker for bringing back the full house backfield. It would be great. Mark Hughes says, with the great outcome of our 2-minute offense, do you think we should be running up tempo more often? It's kind of hard with it's kind of hard with tight ends. They get tired, you know. You don't want to freak them out.
I also think too, right? It becomes like it's like it's been successful, but then people just want to take that into a certain thing. It's like the question about unbalance. It's like, well, they should run unbalance all the time. It's like, well, no, they shouldn't, because then it takes out the novelty of like them having to prepare for that and then adjusting and then all the counters you can do. Because if that was your base offense, well, that's easier to prepare for, right? So it's like it's one of those things, right? Where like you said, with the tight ends too, but also like Notre Dame does a lot of stuff where I think it's important to huddle, because they're calling plays that there's a lot of moving parts, like pre and post snap for Notre Dame's offense. And I think it's important, and it's important for like the success of the offense. So, I don't think that they should switch to that. I mean, add it in a little bit more if you're kind of not having success. Yeah, I'm always for that. I think that's the whole point of having that in your bag, right?
You probably would if you started losing.
Yeah.
Notre Dame hasn't been losing yet. So, like, if you're in control of the game, you don't need to be going super fast, you know?
Yeah.
But if you fall down in a game, then, maybe you speed things up. I think this is the last question. All right. Do you think Coogan moves to center next year to free up a spot for Billy Stroud?
I thought this was a really good question, because I think it's
Irish
one of
Bronx
these,
should say that.
Yeah,
Irish Bronx question.
Because there's like a bunch of possibilities for next year. One, Zeke Correll can come back. I don't know if people know that. He can come back for a 6th year. So that's a possibility. So Zeke Correll could come back. You know, if he's gone, could they move Coogan into center? And it's like, Stroud, maybe. They also like Ashton Craig. And, right now he's the number 2 center. So I guess I think it's all going to be about finding the best 5. Like, I mean, it sounds cliche, but that's kind of what it's about, right? Is finding those best guys. So it's like, if Stroud is so good that they're like, we got to get this guy on the field, I mean, then that could happen. But also too, look at what happened with Andrew Kristofic. Like, everyone would have said Andrew Kristofic. You're like, okay, yeah, he did a solid job, in the back half of 2021. Pencil him in. Next 2 years, he's going to be the starter. Then instead of that happening, they move Patterson to left guard. Correll comes in at center, and then you're like, okay, well, now's Kristofic's time. He's going to get doesn't start. I don't even think he's the 3rd guard. Right? Shrouth is probably ahead. I mean, Kristofic probably gets in a game if it's whatever, but like, it's not 100% a guarantee, right? That is, but like, so it's like, keep the competition going, and we'll see. But it's a good question, and it brings up that there's a bunch of possibilities there. And that's good. You always want to have those possibilities, because then you can pick the best guys rather than saying like, well, now Coogan has to move to center because they don't got anybody else. Like, you don't want that to be the situation.
Yeah. And so, yeah, Zeke Correll is playing for his spot next year, basically, if he wants it, right? Maybe they already know what he wants to do. Maybe he wants to move on, but it will be interesting to see how that plays out, because you have a natural center there in Ashton Craig, but you also have a guy that they really like in Billy Schrouth just sitting there, and Pat Coogan's playing all the time. So, and then you've also got the situation with Joe Alt, who more than likely will not be on the Notre Dame team next year. So that's also sitting there. So a lot going on for Notre Dame there. All right, Jamie, that's it. We're going to leave it there. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If this is your first time catching us, please hit the subscribe button. That would really help us out. We would love to have you back. We love everyone in the chat. It was a really good conversation today. Had a good time. Please hit the like button. Please, like I said, subscribe to the show. Hit the notification bell so you know we're going live. We'll be back on Thursday talking about Central Michigan and other Notre Dame football team related topics. So have a good rest of your Tuesday, everyone, and we will talk to you on Thursday.